But Jonah rose up to flee from the presence of God. Jonah 1:3. As far as Jonah was concerned, this is it. It's all over. The story has just ended. God has given the command to Jonah, and Jonah has made up his mind, and Jonah was not going to Nineveh. He had made that decision. He wasn't going. End the story. That's it. That settles it, doesn't it? The will of a compassionate and sovereign God has just been challenged. It's been challenged by Jonah's will, by the will of man, challenged by his creature. The creature has commanded his creator, and the creature has said, no, I'm not going. I'm not going to be obedient, Lord. You got the wrong guy. Remember what Romans 9:20 says. It says, on the contrary, who are you, O man, who answers back to God? The thing molded, the man, will say to the molder, why did you make me like this? Will you? And then he says to the church in Ephesus, he says, Paul, he says, we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to his purpose, who works all things, pos, in the Greek, all, after the counsel of his will. How about that? Then in verse 4 it says, then the Lord, or literally, but the Lord. Now remember, Jonah says, hey, I'm not going. But then it's followed up by, but the Lord. Oh, wait a minute, Jonah. Wait just a second. Verse 4 puts a little kink in Jonah's tail. In verse 3, and then the first two verses, we have the commission of God, and then the sovereign will of God, go. And then the disobedience of Jonah. You see what's going on here? Now let me give you 3 quick points to ponder, and I'll get back to that first point that is probably pretty hazy still. First of all, Jonah's choice was contrary to the will of God. But please notice, the choice of Jonah did not in any way change, amend, or invalidate the plan of God. Nothing can. Nothing can thwart his plan. Because God works all things according to and in conformity with his will. Will the creature say to the Creator, the one who was made by his Maker, why did you do that? Secondly, the heart of disobedience seeks to flee and hide from the presence of God. That's the way it always works with each and every one of us. Whenever we have this mindset to say no to God, we're trying to hide in darkness, and it doesn't do any good. Jonah thought he'd get away with it. And also, I want you to notice that something else from the text that we see, and remember that the will of God is never gauged by favorable circumstances. I want to explain that. You remember when Jonah said, I'm going to flee to Tarshish, and he goes down? Well, there's a boat all ready to go. It's got to be God's will. No, it isn't. But the enemy, listen, the enemy will always provide a way to avoid or to go contrary to the will of God. He will provide that for you. And don't claim it's the will of God. Married couples, I'm talking to you. So Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa. And I don't want you to miss these words. They're very specific and they're intentional. And that's where he found a ship waiting there. That's the enemy saying to you, this is God's will. And you know, that's just not incidental, like I said, when God puts things in the text. Okay? He paid the full fare. And you know what he didn't get? He didn't get to the end of his journey. He didn't get what he paid for. Because he paid to get away from God. When God has a call on his life, and he knew what it was, he was a prophet. He was to speak for God. And God said, speak, Jonah. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. There's a fare that we pay that we don't get the benefit of when we're disobedient to the call of God on our lives. We always pay our own fare when we decide to make the choice not to respond when God says go. Please remember that, guys. Have a good night. I love you all.